Hello, good people, and welcome back to today's lesson. So, this particular lesson is about colonial regions. We are in Unit 1 about government, colonies, and revolution. So, thus far, just a little quick recap of things that we've done. We've talked about power and authority. We have discussed 10 types of government with 4 subtypes in there, so 2 different kinds of democracy and 2 different kinds of a monarchy. From there, we've talked about the 4 functions of government. We've discussed the differences between levels and branches of government and their respective ways that they interact with the law and their roles. We have talked about origins of the United States government, how we get from an absolute monarchy in Great Britain all the way to 13 whole colonies, and us being ready to completely get rid of the British monarchy and their presence in the colonies and then turning into states. And so we're going to dive in a little bit more about the actual colonies themselves, not necessarily the economy alone, but also who's there, what religion are they, why are they here in the first place. We're going to kind of put these colonists into categories. So here's my fantastic meme for the day that you've probably already seen and maybe chuckled at a little bit. I think it's great. Okay, so we're going to keep it moving. So we have already labeled these 3 regions, and we are going to move on to our climate. We're going to talk about religion. We're going to talk about motivation, which is the same thing as origins on your note sheet. And additionally, we're going to talk about their economy. So economy, religion, climate, and why people are there in the first place. Now, this pertains mostly to colonists because we know that there are people in the colonies who did not give their consent to be there, who'd rather be somewhere else. We know that there are people who are enslaved who are inside of the colonies. We know that there are people who are indentured servants who maybe don't want to come to the New World, but they felt as though they had no other option. So this particular thing is mostly for people who are colonists who do come to the New World and to the 13 original colonies of their own free will. And the vast majority of people who are in the colonies, especially in the New England and Middle colonies, fall into these categories. So we labeled this and colored it, and it should be nice and colorful. So your southern colonies, your New England colonies, and your middle colonies are up here. Our southern colonies are from bottom to top: Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland. We do count Maryland as a southern colony as of right now because they do participate wholeheartedly in the slave trade at this point in time in the 1700s. And now, moving on to our middle colonies, this teeny little slice over here, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, all qualify as middle colonies. And then these 4 colonies over here, all of this up here is New Hampshire as of the 1760s until later on when it splits into Vermont and New Hampshire. Then we have Massachusetts over here with our fantastic little arm, home of the Boston Red Sox, the best team in professional baseball. At me, okay? The Connecticut over here, which is spelled Connecticut, and then Rhode Island, okay? So those 4 make up our New England colonies. And without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so New England, we know, is frigid, okay? If you've ever watched any professional football in your life and you have watched your team play the New England Patriots and they happen to be at New England in Gillette Stadium in Fox Hollow, Connecticut. Fox Hollow, Connecticut is right about here. It's very close to the border between Connecticut and Massachusetts. It's friggin' cold. Even in the summertime, it's only into the 70s and 80s, and we know good and well here in the South, particularly North Carolina, it gets in the hundreds on a normal basis, and 90 and 100-degree weather, like Amazon rainforest type weather, we're experiencing on a regular basis. Okay, so New England in general has a cold climate. Additionally, if you wanted to get into the geography of it, New England up here does not have a very long growing season because the ground gets too cold in order to produce crops very quickly. So they have a short growing season. They're not able to harvest as many crops as like compared to the South is. They also have very rocky soil and very small amounts of soil that is conducive to large scale farming. So they have a cold climate and rocky soil, and that leads to them not being able to farm on a large basis. They can't plant fields on fields on fields of corn or of tobacco. That's not something that is feasible for New England. I'm kind of going to bounce around a little bit between all these 3 things, so stay with me. We're going down here, we're going to talk about climate in the middle colonies. So the further south we go, And if we're here in Pennsylvania and New York and New Jersey and down into Delaware, they have what's called a seasonal climate. So yes, it does get cold in the winter and there is snow on the ground. However, not nearly as much as New England. And it's not quite as hot as the South. So in Philadelphia, which is right here, but almost on the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So if you look across one of the rivers, downtown Philly, you can see New Jersey on the other side of the river. So a seasonal climate just means that it's hot in the winter. So if you go into Philly in the summertime, it's probably going to be at 85, 90 degrees, almost as hot as it is here down in the south. However, they have winters that are more like New England winters than what we have. We have 2 flakes of snow and the whole county shuts down. So that's not really how it works in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And then zooming all the way down here to the southern colonies, we have a warm climate. Now, some of us think that it's a hot climate, but that's not necessarily true because right now, in the winter or in the spring or in the fall, we have just a warm climate in general, not necessarily tropical, but it is warm. Okay, we have typically a very mild winter, and if we do have some type of serious winter or there's snow on the ground, we have a lot of issues because our state is not really prepared to handle snow. Hurricanes, we got it. We got our hurricanes next. We're ready to go. But we don't really have enough salt in the state to salt all of our roads that are necessary, especially here in eastern North Carolina. So we have a warm climate. We also have a long growing season. We do not have rocky soil. We have fantastic soil for large-scale farming. And that leads us to our next topic, economies. So since we do have a warm climate that is conducive to agriculture, we have what's called in the South an agricultural economy. So basically, we farm, okay? Now, let's keep it moving. The middle colonies have a mixed economy. Since they do have both these types of climates, they have some places that has great growing seasons and great soil, and some places that not so much. So they have a mixed economy. Some people trade, some people farm. It just depends on where you are and what you want to do. Now up here in New England, farming on a large scale is not going to happen for you. If you're like, I want to be a farmer and also live in Massachusetts, your life is going to be tough because it's not like you can grow tobacco in Massachusetts all year round. And the amount of crops you are able to produce in New England is significantly smaller than the amount you'd be able to produce somewhere else. So instead of doing that and trying to farm, which is kind of a lost cause in New England, they decide, you know what, we're going to be a trading economy. They have very deep harbors, especially in Boston and in some of the port cities. And New York is also a port city as well. So New York City is like right here. So when it comes to New England, they are a commercial economy. So the South ships all of their stuff up here, and the North, in New England, I should say, ships it back to the mother country. So they have a commercial economy. And now I get to move on to religion. All right, there are Puritans everywhere, left, right, and center in New England, and this stems from people who are Puritans who decide that because they're afraid of being beheaded by the king, they're going to leave Great Britain and they're going to sail and try to go roughly here to Jamestown. They miss by a lot. By 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6 states. They miss by 5 states. And so they land smack in the middle up here in Plymouth Rock, which is kind of down from Boston. And so they settle there, and there are Puritans everywhere. Now, because some Puritan at some point in time pissed off the leaders of the Puritans, we then have New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. And that's a story for American History 1, but basically you have Puritans all over the place in these 4 colonies in New England. All right, now that we move into the middle colonies, they're just kind of a mixed bag. There's all kinds of people in the middle colonies. So they have diverse religions, but specifically, they have a high population of Quakers and a high population of Catholics. Okay, so these 2 particular religions are prominent in the middle colonies. And down in the south, we have people who are mostly Anglican. All right, so Anglican is another word for King Henry's church, or the Church of England. So if you think back to our good old pal, King Henry VIII, who had 6 wives, not at the same time, he decides because he cannot have a boy, he needs to get a divorce from his wife, and the Pope's like, nah fam, can't help you out with that. So King Henry's like, okay, bye, making my own church. So once he makes his own church, the Church of England, people who follow that church and think that King Henry is the leader of that. They are called Anglicans. People in the South are mostly here to farm. They're not worried about whose religion is what and like who likes Jesus the best. They're not particularly concerned with that. Mostly they're just here to make some cash. All right, speaking of which, dun da da da, you guessed it, profit is next, and motivation. Same thing as origins. Please don't feel like this is a weird part of your note sheet. I promise it's supposed to be here. So in the southern colonies, they're mostly here for cash. And again, moving on up to the middle colonies, they're a mixed bag. They're here for mixed reasons. I'm so sorry. The word diverse is our friend today for the middle colonies. So they're here for diverse reasons. Some people settle here in Pennsylvania to be Quakers and be weird and not make little Quakers, but just recruit other Quakers. Fine, do your thing, fam. If you want to go farm and not, do the deed, fine, do your thing, okay? If you also want to be over here and you want to be Catholic and you want to be a trading person who lives in a port city in New Jersey, go for it. Okay, so they're here for diverse reasons. And then over here in New England, generally they came here for religious freedom, but let's not give them a free pass for that. Puritans typically are only all about the religious freedom life if it pertains to just them. So Puritans are not nice to Quakers, Puritans are not nice to Catholics, and they're especially not nice to Anglicans because the Anglican Church is the one that they wanted to try and fix, that they think has all the problems. So generally they came here for religious freedom, but mostly for just themselves. So this has been the colonial regions.